Flight permission from Ouagadougou to Moscow denied. There was concern in the foreign minister's voice. In the presidential palace, Ibrahim Traoré was looking at the map. American and French fighter jets are patrolling just outside our airspace. They will do everything to prevent you from attending the meeting in Moscow. Traoré turned to his team with determined looks. They cannot stop me. Africa's future will be shaped at this meeting. Security Chief Zongo stepped forward. Mr. President, you could go to Mali by road and then fly to Russia from there. But Traoré interrupted. Mali is also under blockade. Western powers are monitoring all borders. But I will go through a route they would never expect. The tension in the meeting room was almost palpable. Ibrahim Traoré's closest advisors and security team were discussing how they could reach the BRICS summit in Moscow. The summit was not just an economic meeting but a platform where a new world order was being shaped, and Burkina Faso's presence there was vital for Africa's future. Foreign Minister Ousmane Coulibaly continued to relay the latest news. Not just us, Mali and Niger are in the same situation. Western powers are trying to isolate all West African countries that want to get closer to Russia. Traoré walked to the window and gazed at the horizon of Ouagadougou. France was not pleased with the attempt of Burkina Faso, once its colony, to now make its own decisions. Especially the close relations established with Russia in recent months had caused alarm bells to ring in the West. Are all airspaces from West Africa to Moscow closed? Asked Traoré. Yes, Mr. President, replied Air Force Commander General Diallo. France has stated that it will not allow flights over Algeria. Libyan airspace is already forbidden. Even Egypt is under pressure. Traoré thoughtfully returned to the table. What about sea routes? Defense Minister General Ouedraogo shook his head. We have no coastlines, Mr. President. The nearest port is in Ghana, and that is also under Western influence. Traoré looked at the portrait of Thomas Sankara, Africa's first great post-colonial leader and Traoré's hero. Sankara had faced similar challenges in his time. We will find a way, said Traoré determinedly. Because this is not just a summit, it is Africa's stance against colonialism. The West cannot control our relations with Russia and China. The meeting room fell silent. Everyone was wondering what Traoré was thinking. We will plan this as a special operation, Traoré finally said. Intelligence Chief Caboret, allow only the people I trust most to enter the room. In a short time, only 5 people remained in the room. Traoré, Security Chief Zongo, Intelligence Chief Caboret, Defense Minister Ouedraogo, and Foreign Minister Coulibaly. Traoré approached the map and traced a new route with his finger. Through the Sahara Desert, from the south of Algeria, then to Syria, which is friendly to Russia. From there to Moscow. No one will expect this route. The defense minister looked surprised. Mr. President, crossing the desert is very dangerous. There are terrorist groups, water scarcity. But French radar coverage is weak in that region, added Intelligence Chief Caboret. By flying at low altitude, we can pass undetected. Traoré nodded. That's exactly what I'm thinking. We'll use a small private jet, not a warplane. By flying at low altitude, we'll stay below most radars. And when we reach Syria, asked the foreign minister. We'll ask for help from Russia, said Traoré. The Assad regime is Russia's ally. They can open a safe corridor from there. The plan seemed risky, but it was feasible. The team began to arrange the details. Which jet to use, which pilot is trustworthy, how to refuel. There's one more thing, said Traoré. We need to leave a false trail to mislead the West. The official announcement will be that I cannot attend the summit due to health issues. Intelligence Chief Caboret grinned. At the same time, they can see your double in the palace. So, they'll think you're in Ouagadougou. Exactly, said Traoré. The name of the operation, Red Desert. Within 2 days, all preparations were completed. Ibrahim Traoré left the palace at midnight, wearing civilian clothes, with a small bag beside him. At the palace, a security officer who resembled him would play the role of president. The international press was informed that Traoré was resting due to a serious flu. Traoré reached a secret airstrip outside of Ouagadougou, accompanied by a small convoy. There, a small private jet was waiting for him. Russian-made, old but reliable Yakovlev. The plane is completely ready, Mr. President, said the pilot, Colonel Suguri. We will fly at low altitude. Most radars won't be able to detect us. Is the route confirmed? Asked Traoré. Yes, sir. We'll pass through the north of Mali, the most desolate regions of the Algerian desert, then the south of Libya. We will not enter Egyptian airspace at all. In Syria, we'll land at a small airport near Latakia. Traoré nodded and signaled his small team, 4 guards and intelligence chief Traoré, to board the plane. Defense Minister Ouedraogo bid them farewell on the runway. "May God clear your path, Mr. President," he said. "You are fighting for Africa's future." Traoré shook the minister's hand. "The West can no longer control Africa's destiny. In Moscow, we will lay the foundations for a new world order." The jet prepared for takeoff. This was not an ordinary flight. It was a symbol of a country's struggle for independence. As the jet took off, Traoré looked at the lands of Burkina Faso one last time through his window. This is how Thomas Sankara's unfinished dream had begun, Africa's true independence. The plane flew at low altitude throughout the night. The pilot determined special routes to avoid radar systems. In northern Mali, they detected a radar signal from a French military base for a moment, but they quickly changed their route to avoid detection. In the early hours of the morning, they were flying over the Algerian desert. The sunrise had painted the endless sea of sand golden. Traoré remembered the words Thomas Sankara once said, "The most powerful weapon of colonialism is the fear and dependence in the mind of the colonized." "Mr. President," said Traoré, sitting beside him. "Latest intelligence reports. Intelligence services in the West still believe you are in Ouagadougou. The plan is working." Traoré smiled slightly. Being invisible is sometimes the best defense. During the noon hours, a dramatic development occurred. The plane's fuel level began to drop dangerously. The pilot had been forced to use more fuel than calculated. Constantly changing routes and low-altitude flying had reduced efficiency. "Our fuel won't be enough to reach Syria," said the pilot anxiously. "The nearest landing point is in southern Libya, an oil facility in the desert." "Libya," said Traoré nervously. "That's an unstable region. There are many militant groups." Traoré thought. The risk was big, but options were few. "Land," he finally ordered. "Inform Moscow about the route change. We want our Russian partners to use their connections in the region." The plane landed on a dirt runway next to an old oil facility in the Libyan desert. The facility appeared abandoned, but the maintenance of the landing strip was noteworthy. Immediately after landing, Traoré and his team exited the plane as a precaution to check the surroundings. Traoré called their Russian contacts in Moscow using a satellite phone. "I reported our situation," said Traoré. "Elements of the Russian Wagner group in Libya will be here soon. They will provide fuel and security." "The Wagner group?" asked Traoré. Traoré nodded. "Yes, Russia's most reliable supporters in the region. They will both provide fuel and ensure our security." An hour later, a dust cloud rose from afar. 4 off-road vehicles were approaching. Traoré's guards prepared their weapons as a precaution. When the vehicles stopped, a man who identified himself as the Libya commander of the Wagner group got out of the front car. "Mr. President," he said in English with a Russian accent, "Putin said your security is our priority. We will do everything for you to reach Moscow." Fuel barrels and armed men came out of the cars behind the man. They quickly began refueling the plane. "How soon can we take off?" asked Traoré. "Within an hour," said the Wagner commander. "However, you'll need to change your route. French intelligence might be looking for you over Libya. Instead of going directly to Syria, we suggest you go over the Red Sea to Saudi Arabia, then to Iran." Traoré frowned. "This would make the journey even longer. How much time do we need?" "Arrival to Moscow will be delayed by at least 12 hours, said the commander. "But your security is more important." Traoré approached Traoré. "Mr. President, the summit starts tomorrow. You can still make it." Traoré nodded. "All right, we will continue according to the new route." After the refueling was completed, Traoré and his team boarded the plane again. The Wagner commander gave detailed information about the new route to the pilot. "Russian air defense systems will be tracking you," said the commander. "When you enter Iranian airspace, Russian military planes will escort you." Traoré shook the commander's hand. "Thank you. We won't forget this help." The plane took off again, this time heading towards the Red Sea. During the evening hours, while flying over the Red Sea, Traoré received an urgent message. "Mr. President, there's a big problem. The American Sixth Fleet is positioned in the Red Sea and is monitoring all flights. It seems they noticed our stopover in Libya." Traoré's face tensed. "Can they stop us?" "According to international law, no," said Traoré. "But that hasn't stopped them before." "Tell the pilot to enter Iranian airspace as soon as possible," said Traoré. "We'll be safer there." However, while flying over the Red Sea, radar warning systems began to sound. Two American fighter jets were closely following them. F-18 Hornets are tracking us, said the pilot in a tense voice. They're trying to communicate via radio. Don't respond, said Traoré determinedly. We're in international airspace. They have no legal grounds to stop us. The American fighter jets approached both sides of Traoré's jet. One of the pilots was making a sign from the cockpit window, land. Can they force us to land? Asked Traoré anxiously. That would be a declaration of war, said Traoré. Attacking the plane of the president of Burkina Faso is the same as attacking our country. The tension continued to rise. The American planes began to make threatening maneuvers, cutting off Traoré's jet, creating turbulence. How long until we reach Iranian airspace? Asked Traoré. About 30 minutes, said the pilot, struggling to control the plane. At that moment, a voice was heard from the radio, clear, determined, and with a Russian accent, to American planes. This is the Russian Air Force. Move away from that civilian aircraft immediately. The radar showed 4 Russian fighter jets approaching rapidly. They must have taken off from a Syrian base. The American planes hesitated for a moment, then began to withdraw when the Russian planes came into view. The Russian jets, modern Su-35s, approached quickly and formed a protective formation around Traoré's plane. We're entering Iranian airspace, said the pilot in a relieved voice. We're safe now. Traoré took a deep breath. The crisis had been averted, at least for now. The Russian jets will escort us to Tehran, said Traoré, relaying the message from the radio. From there, we'll pass over the Caspian Sea to Russia. The next morning, Traoré's jet finally landed at Moscow's Vnukovo airport. On the runway, the Russian deputy foreign minister and an honor guard were waiting. Western intelligence services had made great efforts to prevent Traoré from reaching Moscow but had failed. When Traoré disembarked from the plane, Russian officials warmly welcomed him. Mr. President, we heard your journey was difficult, said the deputy minister. Putin is eagerly waiting for you. Difficulties only strengthened our determination, said Traoré with a smile. Africa's voice will be heard at this summit. Within an hour, Traoré was at the Kremlin. Among the world leaders gathered for the BRICS summit, his arrival was the most dramatic. Despite all of the West's blocking efforts, Ibrahim Traoré had succeeded in reaching Moscow. Putin welcomed Traoré in the magnificent St. George Hall of the Kremlin. The two leaders shook hands and withdrew to a corner for a brief conversation. I appreciate your courage, President Traoré, said Putin. Breaking the pressure that the West imposes on Africa was not an easy decision. Burkina Faso will determine its own destiny, said Traoré. No external power can dictate who we choose, who we cooperate with anymore. As the meeting began, Western diplomats were watching Traoré from every corner. His reaching Moscow was a clear sign that the West's control over Africa was diminishing. When the official meeting began, Traoré took the podium. His words were directed not only to the leaders in the Kremlin but to the whole world. My presence here today is proof of Africa's rise as an independent voice, he began. Some powers tried everything to prevent us from coming here. They closed our airspace, made threats, harassed our plane. But we are still here. The hall filled with applause. The leaders of China, India, Brazil, and South Africa were all giving a standing ovation. Africa is no longer a place where they can gallop freely in their gardens, Traoré continued. We African leaders will act in the interests of our own people. Russia, China, or the West, we will choose the partners we will cooperate with, we will not allow it to be imposed on us. The speech was recorded as one of the most powerful moments of the BRICS summit. Traoré's message was clear. Africa was no longer the West's backyard. Throughout the summit, Traoré signed a series of agreements with Russia and China, in mining, military training, agricultural technology, and many more areas. But perhaps most importantly, the process of Burkina Faso joining BRICS had begun. On the last day of the summit, Putin hosted a special dinner. At the dinner, only his closest allies were present, and Traoré was the guest of honor. We are experiencing a historic moment, said Putin, raising his glass. A new world order is being born. The West's unipolar hegemony is ending. And you, President Traoré, are playing an important role in this change. Traoré raised his own glass. For Africa's true independence, we are continuing the struggle that Thomas Sankara started. And in this struggle, we will never forget the friends who stand by us. As his days in Moscow were ending, a plan had been prepared for Traoré's return journey. This time, Russian air forces would provide direct protection. Moreover, countries that had closed their airspace had now stepped back under Russia's pressure, allowing Traoré's safe passage. The return journey was much more comfortable than the outbound one. Traoré returned to Burkina Faso with the diplomatic victory he had won. At the airport in Ouagadougou, a large crowd greeted him. Thousands of people had gathered to salute their leader who had broken the West's blockade. Africa is awakening, the crowd shouted. Independence. Freedom. Traoré addressed the people. My dear citizens, our journey to Moscow was not just a diplomatic visit. This was a historic step on the path to Africa's true independence. The West tried to stop us, but they couldn't. Because from now on, Africa will determine Africa's destiny. The crowd applauded enthusiastically. Traoré's journey to Moscow had become a symbol of Burkina Faso's struggle for independence. The West's reaction was not delayed. France announced that it was stopping all economic aid. America began to apply sanctions. But Traoré had anticipated this. They will try to suffocate us economically, he said in a cabinet meeting. But we now have new partners. Russia, China, India, Brazil. BRICS is opening a new economic corridor for us. Indeed, in the months following the Moscow visit, Burkina Faso's economy showed unexpected resilience. Places vacated by French companies were quickly filled with Russian and Chinese investments. Gold mines began to be operated more efficiently. Agricultural technologies developed, infrastructure projects accelerated. Other countries in West Africa were also influenced by Burkina Faso's success. Mali and Niger began to take similar steps, getting closer to Russia and China. A ripple effect had been created. A year later, the balance of power in the world had visibly begun to change. BRICS was now one of the most powerful blocs of the global economy, and African countries were playing an increasingly active role in this bloc. While speaking at the African Union meeting, Ibrahim Traoré summarized the transformation. A year ago, the West tried to isolate us, to prevent me from going to Moscow. But we overcame all obstacles. And today, Africa's economic independence is no longer a dream, it is a goal that is being realized. Western powers had to accept the decline of their influence in Africa. The French president sent an official request to visit Burkina Faso. He now wanted to talk as equal partners. Our door is open to anyone who wants a real partnership, said Traoré. But no conditions can be imposed anymore. A new era has begun where Africa will make its own decisions. Traoré's determination to reach Moscow despite all obstacles was recorded as a turning point not only in the history of Burkina Faso but of all Africa. That difficult journey was proof that a continent's longing for independence could not be stopped by any power. And it all started with a leader saying, "They cannot stop me." Africa's future will be shaped at this meeting.